Hello and welcome back to Ruben Uncut. Today it's another movie review. Um what, Ruben, you're not gonna talk about the Middle East? I'm sorry, that's a real hot potato right now, and I have some spicy takes that I don't think anyone's ready for right now, but that's okay. Don't worry, I'm not gonna pull anything weirdly shocking out at you either. All right, but today we're here to talk about Saw X, which I recently seen. I should note I have seen, including Saw X, I've seen 9 out of 10 of the Saw movies. No, I have not seen Spiral. I wanted to see Spiral. I just never got around to it, for no real reason, really. But Saw X is actually the one of the few Saw movies I've seen in the theaters. Ironically, the only other Saw movie I've seen in the theaters is Saw 4, which sucks. Uh, which I will explain to you. All right, so what is Saw X? Well, Saw X is a semi prequel in the Saw franchise. My understanding is that Saw X takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2 somewhere. If I have it correctly. Maybe it's Saw 2 and Saw 3. Honestly, it could probably have been either. But the point is that amazingly, Saw, as a franchise that has made it to 10 movies, not all of them good, and not all of them even mattering, Saw X actually was solid as hell. So, what is the Saw franchise? For those unfamiliar with the Saw franchise, I take it you don't watch horror movies, / you don't like gore. But the best way to describe the Saw movies is simply this: you come for the gore, you stay for the lore. That's right. The thing that makes the Saw franchise interesting is that it has extensive lore, sort of existential threads that are weaved throughout the franchise. Frequently, this is the only thing making some of the weaker movies in the franchise worth watching, like Seven. If it wasn't for the lore, I don't know why you'd watch that at all. Also, it's also frequently weakness of lore in a Saw movie is the #1 disqualifier for a Saw movie. I'm looking at you, Jigsaw. Jigsaw was the 8th movie in the franchise, and frankly, after watching it, my major thought was, well, that wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but at no point in the movie did I feel like it had justified its own existence. And a major problem and a major reason for this is because, much like many sort of pseudo slasher serial killer horror based movies, once you kill off the main antagonist or protagonist is not really even the right word for how Saw does this. The central serial killer figure makes it hard for the franchise to keep going. And this is extra challenging for Saw because the entire concept behind Saw was that a man named John Kramer was dying of cancer. Now, this civil engineer, John Kramer, who was dying of terminal brain cancer, realized that life was a gift that people just didn't seem to appreciate. So he would set them up with horrific, torturous games that they would have to play the game, normally involving some type of physical or mental sacrifice to survive. And it could get pretty gruesome, very gruesome. Often people dying simply because they would not muster the physical sacrifice of pain or dismemberment to live. Because in the mind of Jigsaw, what John Kramer would later be known as, actually, here's the thing that's interesting about that. He's known as Jigsaw, and this is really only addressed in a couple movies. They sort of like forget about it after a while. Is that initially he would like take a puzzle piece, like piece of skin out of people who failed, For whatever reason, the franchise stopped addressing this and they just kept calling him Jigsaw, which is interesting. It was at the time of the first movie also commented that it was bold that the franchise would name itself after what at that point had been the like fan code word for Texas Chainsaw, being just Saw. They can't call it that now because now Saw has definitely been taken over by the Saw franchise. But as we watch the movies, the first three movies feature a live John Kramer. And John Kramer is played by actor Tobin Bell. Wait, do I have that right? Yes. Yes, I do have that right. Sorry, for a second I had a image of that younger British actor in my head. I forget his name. Something Toby or Tobin or Bell. Whatever. The point is that Tobin Bell somehow he became the heart of the franchise, which was a problem because he died in the third movie. And yeah, that's this presented a unique challenge for the franchise moving forward. Essentially, they had three kind of solid films, and they had to follow it up with a fourth movie. A fourth movie that proceeded to essentially sever all of the strings of lore that had been tied into it up to this point, leaving the fourth movie sort of aimlessly at the end and making it feel like the new quote unquote Jigsaw at the end felt random and almost out of nowhere, which was a problem and led to the fourth movie feeling like shit. Fifth movie felt a little bit better. And the sixth movie, however, redeemed itself with a solid concept of making the major people who were tortured and punished by Jigsaw's puzzles insurance people. Yeah, get those motherfuckers. I used to work in insurance. Yeah. Sixth was a high point after four, and then it went on to seven. Seven, the big thing being is that they got Cary Elwes to finally come back. In hindsight, they should have thrown all the money possible at Cary Elwes to be, you know, the big reveal for the Jigsaw in 4. That would have been the better, stronger, more lore-based move than just introducing a new character no one had ever met in the franchise before and didn't give a shit about, because there's no twist to meeting someone you just met. Not a twist. Not a shocking reveal. It's just like, oh, it's that guy who's only been in this movie. Terrific. Real heady stuff. Of course, the 7 had some interesting ideas going on in it, but ultimately it was just another Saw movie that had the benefit of having Cary Elwes in it. And then there was Jigsaw, an attempt to bring it back. I don't even remember who turned out to be the new Jigsaw at the end of that movie, because Jigsaw, like I said, is fairly forgettable and doesn't have a real place in the franchise. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel necessary. I haven't seen Spiral, the one where Chris Rock became the producer and tried to do his own thing in a spin-off type of way, because the Lionsgate was like, hey, this is one of our biggest franchises ever. This is the franchise that got us into theaters and off of the straight-to-video grind that we've been doing for decades before we became a big studio name. Yes, that's where Lionsgate comes from. They used to do a lot of straight-to-video horror, and then Saw made them some fucking money, and they were like, we're going to release a bunch of shit in theaters. And eventually they got franchises like Twilight and The Hunger Games that made them good money. And also now this day, and also later Expendables, which eventually fell off. Expendables 4. Maybe you've seen my review for that. And of course, John Wick, which honestly, the John Wick movies may be some of the best movies that have ever come out of Lionsgate. Most easily the most like consistent franchise they got going or have had going. So let's get to Saw X. Now, Saw X is interesting because Saw X, like I said before, is a semi prequel that's supposed to come between like 1 and 2, or it may be 2 and 3. I can't remember. It also isn't super important where it comes in those. Now, Saw X is interesting because Saw X is very different in terms of the way it approaches the storytelling. All the other Saw movies sort of had developed this like twisty, curvy formula that it would involve things like lots of messing with the audience's sense of time and telling stories kind of non-linear, but telling them in with non-linearly without telling you they're non-linear. Often Tobin Bell's character, John Kramer, would sort of be in the background and you'd hear his voice mostly. And there would be some points where he'd be in the main part. 3 put him really out in front because it's the one where he's dying. Now, Saw X is different than almost all of these movies in a couple of key moments. This is one movie where we can easily say that John Kramer is the protagonist. This movie is about him. And hats off, because Tobin Bell is the deal. Like, he's what makes the franchise work. And he's back in force. This movie is told from his perspective, straight on, not his victims, like most of the movies, or the cops investigating him. In fact, there are no cops investigating this event because it happens in Mexico. Well, most of it. The other thing is that sometimes some of the best Saw movies are ones that choose a deserving target. And in this case, the deserving target are medical grifters. Con men selling pseudoscience as a cure. And that's really what it's about. In the movie, we meet John Kramer. Most of the movie the early part of the movie focuses on him as he is struggling with his terminal cancer diagnosis and getting very frustrated as, there are bits of, I'm in a very sunny area and there's dust just floating through my camera shot. Where was I? Right. But John Kramer is struggling with his cancer diagnosis. And he's talking to doctors, and doctors are like, maybe you should just accept that you're dying, maybe retire from your work. They don't know his work is, torturing people. In sadistic, weird, I am the most, in many ways, Saw feels like a Batman villain that never got to meet Batman throughout the franchise, if I'm being honest with you. Now, the doctors are telling him things like, maybe you should retire, relax. Some people find it easier to accept that they're dying. And John is like, you want me to die easy? You want me to make it easy to die? John doesn't like that. But one day in his cancer support group, there is a man there. And they share their stories. This man claims to have pancreatic cancer that is killing him. And then later on, after John is struggling, there doesn't seem to be any hope in sight. He runs into this man again at an outdoor coffee place. And this man tells him how he got into a special project to do currently un-FDA approved medical procedures in America. And he gives John the address to a website where he can look into it. This project is called the Peterson Project, spelled with a D, not a T. And what he discovers is a Scandinavian man who claims to have a cure for cancer. And when he contacts it, it goes to his daughter, who invites him to be part of a special group going through the procedure in Mexico. And so he goes to Mexico, where he is greeted, and he is immediately taken in by these people. He thinks that they are wonderful, that they are nice, and they have sold him hope. He believes he has hope. He thinks he is going to get to live. Now, we've seen the other Saw movies, so we know the hope is a lie. And at a certain point, you realize that everyone who is talking to him is either lying or dying. I'm not going to tell you who's lying and who's dying because that would spoil some of it, but we will. But essentially, he has the procedure only to realize shortly after, ironically, in an attempt to show gratitude to the people he believes has saved his life, that it has been a scam the whole time. A complete scam. A horrible scam. Nothing but pseudoscience and lies. And they've been extorting him and other dying people for their money. The last thing they have to give to their families. Now, of course, these scammers have just fucked up. They have scammed the worst possible person they could scam. And you see, the thing that makes Saw X different than a lot of other Saw movies, with the exception of 6, which has a personal note towards John Kramer's character with the insurance companies, you realize. Saw X is 100% personal. In a lot of the other Saw movies, like I said, John Kramer is in the background. He lets the puppet do most of the work. You've seen the puppet on the bike. He lets that do most of the work in most of the other situations. Don't worry, the puppet's here. If you love the puppet is here. John openly shows all of these people his face. He wants them to know why they're here. And he wants them to know that it is him. This separates him. This separates this Saw movie from a lot of other Saw movies. And what follows is, of course, some good old-fashioned Saw fun, except this time it's told completely linearly. We are watching each of the steps actually in the order that they are occurring, which is very different from Saw. There's no fucking with you in terms of time. This movie is about Tobin Bell's character. This is about John Kramer. There's even a sequence in the movie, and I won't spoil which trap it is, but one of the traps from the trailer is actually not even a real trap, because there's a sequence in the movie where we witness him seeing someone and him judging that person in his head as he witnesses them potentially making a bad choice in life. And we get to see the insight of like how he imagines the trap, how he thinks of the appropriate punishments for these individual people. Of course, like all good Saw movies, everything, of course, is an elaborate mousetrap. I will tell you that this is a Saw movie where a surprising number of people actually make it successfully past their tests. I won't tell you who. If you like Saw movies, then Saw X is definitely a good time. In fact, it is one of the best Saw movies in a long time. Every once in a while that happens, where a franchise will suddenly realize, oh, wait, that was the thing that made it work. The thing that makes it work is Tobin Bell's character. And that's what we get. And it works. And it's good. Now, obviously, Saw movies are not for everyone. It is gory. Oh, man. Is it gory? Of course, it wouldn't be a Saw movie if it wasn't. This is the franchise, of course, that prompted the term torture porn. Although I will say the Saw movies are better than the Hostel movies. The Saw movies are better than the Hostel movies. 100%. Like I said, you come for the gore, you stay for the lore. Now, obviously, I think you're going to enjoy this movie more if you've seen the other Saw movies. But honestly, out of the Saw movies you could go into without having seen the other Saw movies, this one actually wouldn't be bad. Which is not a thing I can say for a lot of Saw movies. You could maybe get away with Saw 1, basically Saw 1, Saw 2, and this Saw movie are like the only ones you could truly watch without having watched the other Saw movies. they're still better if you have, because that is the thing that makes the Saw movies work, is that layering of lore. Without it, like, it's just people getting horribly tortured via maniacal, like, the world's most alarming version of the Riddler. But yeah, no, I have to recommend Saw X, especially, we're in the spooky season now. And where the movie succeeds, though, is as a John Kramer character piece. Now, the villains in this movie, because in this one, it is one of the few ones where we know that the people he is torturing are the bad guys. Specifically, one person that he is torturing is clearly the worst person. And at the moments of the movie where we're starting to question John Kramer's resolve, and we're starting to question maybe these people aren't that bad, because that is a thing that the movie wants us to feel. The movie reminds us that no, this person is a fucking monster, and they deserve what John Kramer is doing to them. Some of the other characters he's torturing, debatable. But this person, they make it clear to the audience that they are a bad person, much worse than John. Now, I will also say that now, normally the Saw movies want us to invest in the people who are trying to escape John's traps, because that's where the tension comes from. Now, in this movie, I was concerned a little bit that that would be a problem, because after all, there's not many parts in the movie where we don't want John Kramer to succeed. Like there's a lot of points in the movie where you're like, oh man, fuck these people. Because genuinely, that's one of the things. This movie is targeting a real problem. We are living in the age of medical pseudoscience. Well, that's not fair. There's always been medical pseudoscience. Snake oil salesman, if you will. But nowadays, that type of horrific pseudoscience is much worse, much more elaborate, and much more pervasive because of the internet. Whether it's selling you bullshit supplements or surgeries that are questionable, that stuff is easier to find now with the internet. And this movie targets those people. And there's nothing, and frankly, it's a deserved target. It's kind of what made number 6 work. Because at a certain point, you're like, yeah, fuck them insurance people. And Saw X is kind of like that too. Fuck them pseudoscience bitches. Out here trying to steal your money while you're dying. But the movie does throw something at us at the end that allows us to feel that tension again. And I genuinely was concerned at certain points, like, oh man. But of course, don't forget that at the end of the day, the Saw movies are an elaborate mousetrap for both the players and the audience. I'm not really doing a spoiler section because what would I do? Talk about the gruesomeness of it? I mean, yeah, I could. But it's not like I'm here to talk about deep symbolism either. There's social commentary, of course. We're torturing pseudoscience grifters. But I can tell you that without spoiling a thing. After all, the trailer tells us that these people are grifters. And of course, it'd be hard for us to understand where the movie was going. It's not like, oh, he gets cured by these people. That's a real scary movie, right? No, it's not. So I have to say, I actually find myself recommending Saw X. It's a good time for what it is. Not everyone's cup of gore, obviously. But if you dig the Saw movies, this is the best Saw movie in a long time. Actually, arguably, probably top 3 Saw movies, which is pretty cool. All right, well, thank you for listening to or watching Ruben Uncut. Please, if you are listening to Spotify, please give us a follow. By us, I mean me. I'm the only person here doing this. I don't know why I said us. I'm not that crazy. If you're watching it on YouTube, please like and subscribe, maybe comment, do that bell thing that lets you know when I'm putting up new videos. It's typically Sundays and Wednesdays for the YouTube, and typically Mondays and Fridays for Spotify. If you would like to contact the show, you can email me at rubenuncut@gmail.com. Or you can always go to the, you can also now comment on the podcast on Spotify, and I can publish those things. No thanks to whoever the fuck Mario is. I'm never publishing your comment, you son of a bitch. He didn't actually say anything worth publishing anyways. Just, he said, not for me, and I suspect he unsubscribed. I personally liked the Little Timmy with the News episode. Fuck you. He's not listening anymore. He unsubscribed. I can say that. Or at least I suspect he unsubscribed. That could have been someone else unsubscribing for different reasons. I don't know. Or you can, you know, of course, leave mean comments on my YouTube pages. Never stabbed anyone else. Once again, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful whatever. Actually, you know what? It's spooky season, so I'll say have a spooky whatever.